In the Caribbean, good morning. I'm calling in from the United Arab Emirates, where I'm currently posted. I just want to commend the Caribbean Telecommunications Union on putting this on today. I think you started off by saying, SG, it's very important that the Caribbean embarks on these types of technologies because they inevitably represent the future. And we're quite fortunate today that Mr. Sebastien of Sandbox and Hrish of Superworld are joining us. And I look forward to a lively discussion where we dive into the various nits and bits of the metaverse world. With that being said, do we have Sebastien and Hrish on at the moment?
Yep, we're here.
Great. I think the first thing that we could jump into, and I could probably pose this to either of you guys, the very basics. If you can both, I know the metaverse right now, there's a lot of confusion about what it is and what it is not. And I would appreciate if either of you could start off by giving our panelists and our audiences the definition in your view of what the metaverse is.
Would you like to start, Hrish?
Feel free, but I can go ahead. Yeah, so you know, in my view, the metaverse is a combination of your life online, offline. It encompasses all of the virtual worlds and platforms. Essentially, it is a persistent interface that enables you to you know, do everything that you love and enhances your life through, you know, the work, your play, education, literally every aspect of your life.
Okay.
Sebastien?
Well, I'd like to add to that. For us, is also about like being able to access new type of experience, more social, more immersive, into a series of digital parallel universes, virtual worlds, through an avatar, through a 3D representation of yourself that you can carry across all those multiple different virtual worlds, which means that there is this notion of your identity is actually truly yours, in a sense of it can be used and moved across different application, services and worlds, which is currently not the case in too many so-called metaverses, which effectively are just virtual world or video games, but closed environments owned by one single entity operating it and not really allowing their users to carry their digital identity, assets, and currency across the board.
So in a way, we can consider the metaverse a much more immersive version of what the internet has to offer in terms of communication and social interaction. But more recently, and this is in the last couple of months, we've seen one large company come out with its rebranding to Meta, i.e. Facebook. And there seems to be a lot of confusion from the market of, is the metaverse just this one place to visit? And I would like, for the audience's benefit, for us to go into that particular question. Is there a single metaverse?
Well, I'm not surprised when I see like this company, Facebook, as announcing from one day to another, like they're rebranding themselves. Like Facebook has been, it's currently touching the life, impacting the life, probably 1 billion people, more or less, which are using it on regular basis. And without any specific announcement before, even the announcement they did, it's not really answering to a lot of questions around like, okay, we're rebranding ourselves, we are becoming a metaverse. What does it mean? And that's like not really satisfying what they've shown to the world about it. So that's triggered a lot of questioning, a lot of attention, of course, and also a lot of concerns because people in 2022 and 2021, they are more aware that like they were actually being collected data upon to be sold and resold that data to advertisers and so on. They've seen like a lot of issues not beyond privacy around like how Facebook has been impacting society, has been impacting politics as well, and for the good and sometimes for not the good, the worse. And so like we're evolving into a more complex world around the notion. And honestly, I find it's really not enough what they've shown to really push through the idea of metaverse. And it's not enough specifically as the core of their business model, which is like around user data collection and monetization. It's nothing was thought about, like anything that could have pushed toward a more Web3, more community and user-driven, less centralized approach. They refer to it as NFT and blockchain, and they say, we're looking at it, but well, who knows, like that's not for us now. So basically they left out everything that might have sounded promising towards a better internet and everything better for users.
When you say
I agree with those points as well. I think centralization is really, not the future of the metaverse. So, what Sebastien was talking about in terms of the concepts of creating very open, interoperable models is, I think this is where it's going. And so I would say there is one metaverse. It is a combination of all these virtual worlds, but they're open and interoperable.
Can you go in a bit deeper, Hrish, about what this future interaction looks like, and specifically touch on something that Sebastien started on, which is the Web3 component of it all? Because on one end, in the past, as early as over a decade ago, we saw platforms like Second Life come out and offer the first of its kind, or the first of many of its kind, of metaverses. We've subsequently seen Roblox and other companies come out offering metaverses, but more recently, in the last couple of years, we've seen actors like yourself and Sandbox, Somnium, Decentraland come out, and they fundamentally redefine what the metaverse is meant to be. Can you go into specifically what you started to touch on why it's different?
Yeah, I think that the concept of permitting, enabling, and assisting the community being formed and thriving in a virtual world as part of the metaverse is a very important part of the future of what we're building. So, again, how can you enable people to come together in an environment where they can cooperate, where they can have ownership, how they can have transparency in those transactions? So I think we're all really building, tools to give our community the ownership of the content they're producing, whether it's a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, that allows them to come together and actually raise capital for a certain cause. There's a lot of technology here, particularly on the Web3 side, that really changes the game for the new models that we're enabling here for our community members. I also think that, as Sebastien, aptly touched on, the types of immersion are enabled by AR and VR, audio, soon to be haptics. So again, we're able to really go into these worlds in ways that we haven't been able to do, even in Second Life, which was amazing. And Phil Rosedale really, I think we're all kind of standing on the shoulders of giants here. So there has been a lot of progress over the last 20, 30 years in this space. So you can't discount that. But I'm really excited about what Sandbox and Animoca and the variety of other companies, Decentraland, a lot of them are doing in this space. What we're working on at Superworld, as an example, is more focused on reality and the real world. And so again, I think that we can kind of serve as a gateway in terms of what we're doing to all of these other other worlds and other ways that people get together. And that's our goal. But I'm very excited about the whole space and what the way that we're enabling technology to empower our community.
Hold on, I want to take this back just a notch, because we have audience members that are now tuning in for the first time. They've heard the term metaverse thrown around. And, you know, to them, the basic question is, what's the difference between the metaverse and a website? You know, I can access a website from my computer, I could view content, I could watch videos, I can interact socially. So let's just take it back a notch to touch on that layman aspect of what's the difference here?
As I was alluding to, in our understanding of the metaverse, it's more than like a 2D interface as a website where information is actually created socially or broadcasted to you from one central entity. The approach we are seeing in the metaverse is like really yourself being projected through an avatar, meaning like you have your physical self and then you have your virtual self that are actually capable to engage with different experiences with other users into various activities that range, I think, into many part and slice of life in a way. Like you can, of course, work on the metaverse, have meeting, business meeting, attend conference, job fairs, etc. You can play games, but there's so many different flavors of all the kind of things you can experience as well as you walk through your avatar into this one or multiple virtual worlds. It include like virtual concert, art gallery, museum, virtual shows, games, parties, and more. You get to own everything you build, and you get rewarded for your engagement, your presence into those virtual worlds. It's also a very different approach toward like what's the value of your time, being your presence, and the content you help create to populate this world, made this new virtual worlds of experiences. One other thing, and I think it's quite important, like the whole Web2 and all those social services are built on user contribution. However, like what user got in return is very little. Like I don't think like a lot of the population that engage with social media can say they are making a revenue or even living out of it. It's such a tiny portion, and it's still very limited into like how the chances of access to it and the revenue distribution across countries has happened. In the metaverse, this new form of Web3 decentralized based metaverse we're pushing for, like the value distribution going back 100% to the users and creators, it's really enabling new paradigms in the way we're approaching the design of that world and the value of it. And to put it concretely speaking, we're seeing countries in what we would call less developed economies being on par with top tier economies in the metaverse. It's a greater equalizer of chances for those new users who participate into building those digital nations online.
Well, this is quite interesting, and both you and Hrish have thrown around a term that I would ask you before I ask my next question is help for our audience define Web 2 and Web 3, because you guys have been using that term quite a bit. And you have to remember that majority of the persons on this call are from the Caribbean, and they're now being exposed to these types of systems. So for their benefit, what is Web 2 and what's Web 3?
All right, I'll start. So essentially, well, we think there is three versions of the internet. It started initially Web 1, basically people or companies publish website, and the information on this website is being consumed by visitors, people like you and myself. We browse the web, but we don't contribute to that information, basically. This is just like one way of consuming. In Web 2, to put things simply, it's essentially the social web. So basically, the platform and the content evolve as users keep contributing to more content towards it in the form of like text, in the form of with blogging, in the form of photos, videos, and music files, so media file as well that they share toward their peers and social networks. Most of the giant of internet Web 2 rely on user-generated content and social media, essentially. So we are thinking, and they became the top platform in Web 2, like we call them the GAFA now. The main issue is like in Web 2, all that content is being submitted by users, but it's still controlled by those few entities that get to decide like what information can be put on and not put on online. It can be moderated, and what happens in terms of like your own data, your own content you submit, how you're being attracted online, etc. So it created a lot of divergent patterns that actually have been fueling the whole economy behind, based on like collecting data and selling data for advertising and transactional things. And the value that is extracted from the user data is only captured by single companies. It doesn't go back to the people who contribute to build that web, the government, or any other entity, even not media. So people complain that it's hard to build a business model where whole value goes to just the platform itself to build something better. So Web3 is positioning itself with the promise at the core that it's built on user owning their own data, using their own, starting with the way they sign in into websites. Web wallets are the main point of signing in into the Web3 based application services and website. And the data you own is actually, you carry it into your wallets that hold your access with your private key to entries into a public ledger, public online database, which is a blockchain, to put things simpler. I hope I was generic enough. Hrish, if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing, explanation of the differences. I would say that one of the interesting things that Web3 is bringing us, again, to reconfirm, I think really is the ownership, but also in addition to that, I think you're going to see a lot of non-human kind of interaction there. Bots. You're going to see, because we have a more trustless system. You're going to be able to interact with entities like DAOs. There's going to be a lot more, incorporation of AI and machine learning into those systems. So I think the decentralization of ownership brings a lot of other components there that we're going to see evolve in the advantages of Web3 over Web 2. I think we had interoperability in Web 2 in certain ways, but as Sebastien said, the ownership and then these other technologies that provide that trustless ecosystem on the blockchain is going to really enable us to do so much more together as communities, but also, even as an individual, being able to interact with, entities that we can have that authenticity of relationship, even if they're not, human per se. They could be, all different types of structures.
Okay, so let's recap here. We've touched on the metaverse being this virtual environment, this virtual 3D environment that's much more interactive and immersive, that lets users enter and participate in a new type of world. And predominantly, the superior version of these meta worlds is driven by Web3 infrastructure, which basically means that the user owns and controls the content. And because they own and control the content, they can move from one meta world to another with their virtual content. So if we were to think of St. Vincent, for example, announcing they're doing their carnival or they would like to do a carnival in the metaverse. If we think about a carnival costume, I could have a 3D designer like we're seeing out of Trinidad. A young lady named Anya Ayang-Chi has designed this incredible 3D outfit for them, which is called an NFT, a non-fungible token. And basically, she can take this avatar of her carnival costume wear it in Superworld, and similarly take it out of Superworld and go and access Sandbox and wear it there as well. So that's a pretty interesting evolution of what we're seeing from internet communication and connectivity. But it goes back to a key point here, which has been touched on quite a bit, and it's why blockchain. Why are we using blockchain for all of this? I mean, surely, you know, you look at groups like Second Life, Facebook's Meta, Roblox, Microsoft, all these various players entering the industry. But why is it that you gentlemen are speaking about blockchain as a component in this particular event?
Well, so far, like we mentioned, like there's only two ways to store information. Either you store it into private, centralized owned databases operated by private companies, and that's what we've seen so far, like by most of the platform we interact and part in Web2, or you rely on a technology that has enabled like information to be stored in a distributed manner, and that has been providing so far enough confidence and trust level because it's backed by technology itself and a number of computers in a large network that makes it not impossible, but probably hard to attack and change information into the network. And that technology so far, and maybe will be another one in a decade, 2 or more, but so far blockchain has proven that it is efficient and it can already be used for various applications, including cryptocurrencies and the finance system. So in a broader scale, NFTs represent any sort of digital assets, can be like art, music, video, game items, virtual lands, avatars. And NFTs are actually records on the blockchain that provide the proof of ownership, the proof of authorship, who made it, the proof of scarcity, digital scarcity, and that is a great application for what we are looking to achieve, which is to ensure that indeed that information is public, transparent, can be trusted, and it cannot be modified or altered by a third party.
Okay, so if I could ask something that I think is on everyone's mind. Currently, the metaverses we're seeing are the polygons or the fidelity is very low at the moment, and it's more akin to a cartoonish / animated type experience. Can you explain why that is and what we could expect for the future? Is this the way things will always be? Are we always going to expect that the metaverse and our experiences would be that of a cartoon character?
All right, yeah, I can start, and you can see some of those example cartoon. We call them voxel 3D characters. Well, because we are evolving in the virtual world, I think we can let our imagination like go and dream bigger than necessarily what we are seeing into the physical world. So we can create content and experience that definitely go beyond the laws of physics, beyond our imagination. And we are not necessarily attached to only try to represent with the highest fidelity, like the traditional world, like trying to create like meta-human or high-def capture. The second thing is like the computing power and cost of storing data to actually make high-definition capture of almost photorealistic humans. It's still very high as of today. Plus, it will require, so it's expensive, it's long to capture, and it will require very high-end devices on the user side to actually render that. Like you can do that on PlayStation 5 and other hardware, but not on any device. So at the moment, to scale fast in both content production and adoption and rendering, we found that a simplified aesthetic representation that's still that's very gamified actually for Sandbox is not the only representation possible, but it's one that is compelling, that allows enough creativity behind for everyone. And so far, brands, companies, creators are liking it enough to engage into this world, and propose new sort of experiences.
Yeah, I think that to Sebastian's point, the technology is definitely still evolving, and as we go through that evolution, at least what we're thinking about at Superworld is how do we again adopt kind of what the latest technologies are out there and keep doing that as technology gets better. There's been a number of inflection points on the technology side over the past 5 to 10 years that we've kind of seen that have enabled what we have now, right? Whether it's mobile, 5G, AR, VR software, the hardware with headsets, and what's possible in terms of accessing all this content, as Sebastien said, that's going to evolve. And so as it evolves, the quality of and the resolution of what you're seeing is going to improve, and the ability to provide that high resolution is going to improve in terms of what can be accessed to the end device. In terms of our vision at Superworld, it's really about reality. And so, to get to that level takes some time in terms of all the technology that's really behind that. But I think, ultimately, I think our goal, and I think all of our goals, is really to provide tools for anyone to achieve whatever they want to see and do, right? Whether that is a high-res type of environment, or even something that's a bit more animated, or a bit more stylistic. So everything is possible, and that's what I'm excited about.
And I think this was you, Sebastien, that had said this at one of your answers, where smaller nations and developing nations in the metaverse have an equal footing or a parity with large nations, basically meaning that the playing field has been leveled. And I think that's a very interesting point, specifically because today we're hosted by the Caribbean Telecommunications Unit, the government of Barbados. And one of the key things that we're looking at from the position of this technology is how can this enable economic growth? How can this better the lives of the average Caribbean person? How could the young entrepreneur utilize this environment to advance themselves and advance their businesses? And if I could bring it to a more contextual position here that's relative to our audience, let me throw out something to both of you, and I'd like both of your answers on this. It's, what do you think the average Caribbean person can expect out of these platforms in the medium and long term? And why should they even care? Hrish, you can kick it off first if you feel comfortable.
Sure. I think that the beauty of what Barbados has done, as well as all the other organizations in support of the initiatives here, like the CTU, and we're working with the Caribbean Disaster Management Association in the Caribbean and the World Bank, and there's a variety of organizations here that have really shown leadership, and again, the community, the citizens of Barbados. That is the reason that we're doing this, is to provide services to them at the highest levels. And I think that the promise of being innovative, sometimes it can be risky because you're taking that leadership role. But the benefits of that are, first of all, you're learning about how those technologies are being adapted at the forefront, at the frontier of what anyone is doing in the world. And that really, again, takes a lot of leadership and insight and bravery, but that will pay off because the citizens will understand how to start interfacing with those technologies, whether it's blockchain or Web3, or whether it's AR or VR. Once you start providing the exposure, especially to the younger population, who are already benefiting from this in school, either in, computer science courses. They're already having that exposure so to see it from the top, to see it from someone like yourself, Ambassador, who's helping, the leaders of your country who are helping kind of promote this, really gives a lot of people inspiration. And that's what I'm really excited about and proud about. And, again, as the technologies evolve, the ways that citizenry can get involved with blockchain, can get involved with these other immersive technologies, is only going to get better. So to take a start and do that, that's the first step. And that's what's very exciting to me as a country. So thank you for what you guys are doing in the space and the leadership you're providing.
You're welcome, and it's quite a interesting point you raise, is that, and I share this opinion with you, is that the education and the learning in the early is so critical. I could only think about what the region would look like today if majority of the population was exposed at a high level to what the internet was in the early 1990s. When I think about that from a concept position, I think, wow, we could have really been the pioneers of the new types of businesses. Maybe Amazon or Microsoft or Instagram could have been founded in Trinidad or Antigua or Barbados. And it's really, I think the jury's still out in what the possibilities of the next generation of businesses are going to be in the metaverse. I think where we are is still extremely early in the metaverse. So I do appreciate your point, Hrish. Sebastien, why should the Caribbean people care about the metaverse? Or people in general, for that matter?
Yes. The first thing is like through events like today, we get to talk about this topic, which you might or might not have been much exposed before. So at least it's raising awareness about the possibilities and opportunities beyond. The world, in my opinion, is going beyond borders, specifically into this digital world. And the kind of skills you need to start building or accessing the metaverse, those are probably not yet skills that you would be taught at schools anywhere in the world, and by the way, and not specifically only in the Caribbean, but yet, like anyone from anywhere in the world can access those and can become a new leader in the space. So the earlier you're positioning yourself and you're helping to support like that next generation of builder, of architect, of fashion designers, and people who can also influence the rest of the metaverse through their culture, for their heritage, for their values they care about, as we initially introduced, I think it's interesting. And we're already collaborating with a certain number of like initiative in the space, like Ministry of Culture, etc., to bring on the local ethnic culture toward the world. We've done that in Korea. We have initiative in Philippines. And I think like the culture of Caribbean is one that's worth promoting and also ensuring in perpetuity through the metaverse to have an even richer global scale and reach. And if you can generate a revenue as well from those activities, that's an even better incentive overall for motivating, engaging, and positioning yourself into this new realm.
Wow. So what's interesting about what you said was you're absolutely right. The Caribbean is so rich in culture, and we have such a diverse talent pool in that vein. We have some amazing artists and musicians and just people of great content creation. So the metaverse becomes this container where I can enter it and represent my creations in a new way to attract a global market, and hopefully in some cases even foreign exchange, just beyond eyeballs. And now look, I don't think I've done service to both yourself, Sebastien, and Hrish. You two are pioneers in the industry. So I should have probably have started off with this, and forgive me for not. But why don't you spend 30 seconds to a minute each telling us about what you guys are doing, what your platform represents, and then we'll take some questions from the audience, which I'll ask Michelle from the CTU to tee up. So before Michelle does that, Sebastien, why don't you go first? Because You know, Sandbox is absolutely one of the leading players right now. You guys have done so well in the market in terms of what you've brought to the industry, the type of performance that you've been able to put out there in terms of the platform development, the type of excitement and hype around the metaverse is in part because of the work you're doing. Let's hear from you on what's going on there and what is Sandbox, why should we care, and how does the average person in the Caribbean get access to your platform, and what should they do next?
So Sandbox, it's essentially this gaming virtual world where creators and players can earn a revenue from the free asset and free experience they make through the use of NFTs and blockchain technology. We've been a long-term player in one of the pioneers in blockchain, and we have 10 years of experience in gaming before, so really catering toward user-generated content. And we also work to bring on some of the world's largest brands onto our platform to reach out to over 1 billion people through them, including IPs and like The Walking Dead, Care Bear, Smurf, music artists like Snoop Dogg, like deadmau5, like Steve Aoki, brands like Adidas, and more recently announced Warner Music Group, typically. So also putting an emphasis on like how gaming we can start with gaming, but how we can reach beyond into like broader entertainment and cultural diversity through gaming. So far to date, Sandbox counts more than about 19,000 unique landowners, about 2 million registered wallets, and it keeps growing rapidly. And we're definitely seeing like 2022 as the year on our roadmap for enabling landowners to publish their experience and really kicking off the whole open metaverse for everyone.
Amazing. And hopefully some of us get to buy some land next to Snoop Dogg, because I understand he's one of your landowners. It's very interesting. Hrish, you know, you've built a platform that you yourself have said brings the reality of the world to that virtual experience. And you're no stranger to the Caribbean. You've touched on it. You worked with the Disaster Recovery Agency, and you've put out an amazing NFT, of which I bought one to support the disaster recovery efforts. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about Superworld and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, thanks again, and thanks again for having us. And it's a pleasure to be here with your audience. You know, I think what really inspired you know, our team and myself to build Superworld, and what our mission is our mission is focused on how do we enhance people's real lives, and you know, how do we leverage these technologies, AR, VR, blockchain, AI, to again collectively build a better world. How do we again collectively take all these activities and do something very positive for the world? I think it's a good time for that. So you know, I think that is our mission at Superworld. And so what Superworld is a virtual world mapped on top of the real world. So everything in Superworld is around us. We're in it right now. So, you know, again, you know, you have a world, I have a world, the government of Barbados has a world, brands have worlds. These are all filters on the real world. So the first way I describe that is I use an example of Pokemon Go, which is that game where you run around and look for digital information. And that's you know, again, an analogy, but what we're saying is that anyone has the ability to create anything. On the data side, what we want to do is, again, use that collective data to empower people. So again, we call it live to earn. You know, a little bit play on the play to earn, which is an amazing thing that's really been an innovation in the market. But we call it live to earn. How do we take these tokenomics mechanisms and apply them to real life activities and people's passions? And then how do we also do that to benefit the world? Things like we're doing with the World Bank and the Caribbean Disaster Management Association, planting trees around the world. There's a lot of things that we can do that are very beneficial. And then the third part of Superworld is monopoly. That's the analogy. We've divided the surface of the earth into 64 billion plots of land. Each plot is a unique digital asset. It's an NFT. And if you buy a plot of land, you become a key stakeholder on the platform. So anyone in the world can become a key stakeholder by owning land in Superworld and then creating anywhere. But it's important to be emphasized, you don't have to own land. You don't have to, come into Superworld that way. You can create content, you can create NFTs, and in the future, you'll be able to create DAOs. We're launching a token. So what we want to do at Superworld, again, is bring all these technologies to people's real life and the things that they're concerned with in their real life. And so for that, I think a lot of people say we could serve as a gateway to the metaverse, gateway to other virtual worlds, a gateway to other platforms. And that's kind of what we're trying to do in terms of our differentiation in the market, is really, again, focus on the real life and the real world.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Hrish, and you guys are doing some awesome stuff. And I'm so grateful that two superstars from the metaverse space were able to come today. And I have a million more questions that I would love to ask you for the benefit of the audience. How do you buy virtual land? Why should you buy virtual land? What is virtual land? And there's a million more questions to go with that. But unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of an all-day session. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it to Michel from the CTU to bring up some questions from our audience. And I'm hoping you gentlemen would oblige and answer those questions. Michel, over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Abed. And thank you to our speakers, Hrish and Sebastien. Now, as you said, Ambassador, there are a million questions. Our participants are flooding the Q&A panel. And you mentioned something. You said that starting is the first step. And it's really early to start at this point, to start off in the metaverse. So our next question is about starting. How do you start? And whether $10,000 US, of course, whether you can buy an opportunity in the metaverse, whether you can start off in the metaverse, $10,000 US.
So I think like there's many ways to start to interact and engage with the metaverse. And there is a misconception that you can only access it if you own land. That's actually not true. You can start engaging with the metaverse without making any single purchase, without any requirement other than your time and your skills. For example, you can start downloading for free all the creation tools, like tools to create 3D assets in Sandbox called Vox Edit, or the game maker that is no code. And you can build experiences and leverage your skills, shock them across social networks, Twitter, Discord, engage with the community until people will want to hire you to build it for their own land, for example. And through the actual revenue you'll generate from providing your services, you can then decide to acquire land or buy asset or just get it back to as fiat or any other cryptocurrency for other purposes. This is just one example, and we've seen that as one of the main entry points in our community. There are ways to engage just as play to earn, being present during events, during alpha season, and so on. Just there is 166, 164 lands, and that's it in Sandbox. So it's a very small number, ultimately, if we compare it to like human population. So it's not every human is meant to own land into the metaverse. However, I believe there is an opportunity for every human to build in it, to engage with it, to spend time with it, to live a part of his life in it.
Sebastien. Hrish?
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Again, especially, how we think of Superworld as well, there's no requirement to buy land. Those that understand what our vision is, we want to make sure that land is accessible. So, there's about 64 billion plots of land, each one unpurchased is 0.1 ether. So about, $250 if someone does want to do that. However, again, everything is free. You can utilize your mobile phone and add content straight from your camera roll, photos, videos, audio. You can upload 3D objects. Our goal on the NFT side, again, you can create NFTs. That's free to do as well. We're looking on doing other integrations with Solana and Polygon, which are ways that buyers can also avoid high gas charges. So again, we want to try to make this as seamless as possible in a variety of ways. I'd say the other really important thing is as the technology evolves, there's going to be more ways to get involved. I think what, DeFi is a very interesting area that a lot of, people that have been into crypto for a while have now really been engaged with. I think there's a lot of new crypto people that would be very interested in accessing the